Hi, I'm Ron Wixman, and I love cooking. And I love cooking in my kitchen. So, today I'd like to make a dish for you that's one of my absolute favorites. It was made for me by an elder aunt that came from the Bujak region of Bessarabia. For those who've never heard of it, it's what's between Ukraine and Romania along the Black Sea. That was an area that had East European Jews, Crimean Tatar Muslims, Crimean Tatar Jews, Germans, and a number of other minorities like Christian Turks, etc., who lived together. And what's fabulous about this region, like Transylvania, is that the cooking had elements of all of them. I'm going to make sweet and sour stuffed cabbage with raisins. Now, the sweet and sour obviously comes from the Germans living there. The raisins are from the Turks and the Caucasians and the Crimean Tatars. The tomato sauce, well, tomatoes didn't exist until the 19th century. The result of this, though, is stuffed cabbage can be made in many, many different ways. All East European Jews made them, and they even had different names. I call them holubchis. Holub is the Ukrainian word for a pigeon. They're little pigeons. Another term is holishkes, meaning fainted. The same story as the Imam Bayalde of Turkey, where after fasting, the Imam ate it and it was so delicious he fainted. We have the same story that after Yom Kippur and the fast, the rabbi ate this and it was so delicious he fainted. Another name is gewickelte Kreut, wrapped cabbage. Another name is prakis. Each woman had her own way of making it. So you're going to see the way I make it today. Now, it's made with a cabbage, and if you look here, I'm beginning to wilt the leaves on a cabbage. So I saw this huge cabbage and decided, oh, now that I can get a great cabbage, why don't I make stuffed cabbage? Now, you need about 1.5 pounds of meat. Traditionally, Jews use beef, but it can be a mixture of beef and pork, whatever you like. So if you're making it Jewish, make it with only beef, but it's up to you. Now, in that, I will fry the onions. I'll have one large diced onion. We have rice, raw rice. Do not use cooked rice. I've seen it in recipes. It makes it too mushy. Remember, these will absorb the flavor of the sauce because they're raw. And an egg. In the sauce, because it's sweet and sour, of course, I have crushed tomatoes. You can use diced tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, but one thing you need to be careful of. Do not use any that has basil or garlic or anything of the sort. It has to be just straight tomatoes or tomatoes and citric acid. Spices will actually ruin it. And because it's sweet and sour, we have brown sugar, about 1/4 cup. Remember, at the end, you're going to taste it. If it needs more sweet, add more. And lemon juice, about 1/4 cup as well. And later in the sauce, I will put onion. So right now, what I'm going to do is take out the cabbage because I think it may be wilted enough to separate out. And what you do, because cabbages are made in threes, 3 leaves in a layer. So don't use a fork because the fork might tear the leaves. If you look at what I'm doing, okay, this isn't ready yet. I need to cook it a little more. But notice, here's how I separate the outer leaves. Here are the big outer 3. Let me get some hot water in there. I will then cook it a little longer, and we take out 1 layer at a time. So let's take a rest, and I'll get to this and get back to you when I'm ready with the leaves to wrap. What I'm going to do now is take off the outer 3 leaves. Remember I said that cabbages come in 3 leaf layers. So here's one. Try to keep them whole. That's the important thing, because when you wrap, you don't want them to fall apart or have holes. So these are huge. I may use them in the bottom as the base, or I may use them for wrapping. But notice this, see, this one is definitely going to go, see the hole? I just cut it up and put it in the bottom of the pan. We'll put cabbage and onion on the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to leave this so I can take out more. The other thing is, don't try to handle them now. They're too hot. The reason I put them in the strainer, is not just to drain them, because I'm actually going to put them on the cold water, is so that I don't burn myself. Don't do damage to yourself. So now I just put on the cold water to cool. What I'm doing now is I'm just cooling the leaves so that I can handle them. This is not part of the cooking. Notice this is the one with the hole in it. This is going to go into the sauce from the bottom. Don't worry about it. So that one I put here. And I will continue doing this until I have enough leaves to make the cabbage dish. Notice I can handle them now without burning myself. Okay. One of the things that's really vital in making this dish that I should have shown you before but totally forgot is the cabbage leaves need to be cut free from the core. So what I had done was cut through, but not all the way. If you cut all the way through, you won't have the control that you need. So what I do is I hold it steady, and here I cut where the leaves, the next layer of leaves, are connected. If you try to cut it all the way out, you don't know where they are, etc. But it's very important to get them free. Now I'll take off another layer of leaves, and then I'll leave it to show you how to prepare the filling. So we have the 3 outer leaves here. The next layer, excuse me. Here is 1. Here is 2. And if you dip it in like this, it helps free the cabbage. Don't pull it hard or it'll tear. Lovely cabbage. 1, 2, and now the third was, I believe, this one. Then I'm going to leave it just so I can make the filling. And you don't have to worry about it getting overcooked because it's going to bake for a number of hours. Okay, let's leave this on the side for now. Let me cool these, and then I'll be right back with you. I'm now going to make the stuffing for the cabbage, which is basically beef. And remember, Jews use only beef. Christians often use beef and pork. But I love fried onions in it. You do not have to fry the onions. In fact, you don't have to use them at all. I happen to love them. It makes it taste much better than just raw onion. So heat the oil. Just put some oil in the bottom of the pan. Wait till it gets hot. And then we put in 1 diced onion. And we just saute them till they are slightly caramelized. Since this takes about 10 minutes, why don't we just take a quick rest while I do this? I'd like you to notice that when you make this, the outer leaves are very large. In an ordinary cabbage like this, as you progress inward, notice how much smaller the leaves get. So I figured I would leave the last ones for you to see. After a while, they get too small. And what you do then is we'll chop it up and put it on the bottom, making it part of the sauce. So far, this is what I have. If your cabbage isn't this large, you're going to find you'll have many smaller leaves. No problem. You just make the wrapped cabbages smaller. I like larger ones. These will be able to make fillings the size of small hamburgers. Otherwise, as I say, it doesn't matter though. They can be any size at all. And here I'm finishing making the fried onion. As you see, it's caramelizing nicely. In fact, they're pretty much ready to put in with the meat. I don't want them to burn. Now, I commented to you that this is optional, and it is. But let me tell you, the difference in taste is tremendous. I love the fried onion in it. I've seen people use raw onion, and I've had it without onion, and I didn't like it as much. Now I put the fried onion in with the meat, and I will mix it. Let me make an important point here. Don't try to mix it with your hands when you put in the hot fried onion. I'm going to now let this rest before I finish making the stuffing. Let's turn off my stove. Okay, now I'll just mix this in a little bit and then leave it. The hot onion doesn't cause any problems with the meat. But we're going to put in egg. If you were to put the egg in on top of the hot onions, what you'd find is you'd have globules of cooked egg, which you don't want. The sole purpose of the egg is to hold it together. And with this much meat, this is actually about 2 pounds. Because I have a big cabbage, you'll use 1 pound to 1.5 if it's smaller. I may put 2 eggs. Now I'm going to put in the rice. And again, raw rice is best because it will absorb much of the flavor of the onion and the meat and the salt and pepper and even some of the sauce. I'm going to mix this with my hands later, but this kind of helps. It's also kind of fun to sit and mush this stuff together. It gives you what to do rather than just letting everything sit. Cooking needs to be fun as well as having a fun finished product that you really like. Again, please don't put herbs, no basil, no thyme. It will not go with a sweet and sour tomato sauce with raisins. Hey, look who's there. I guess you smelled the meat. Yep, there they are, my 2 assistant chefs. This is Ragnar, and this is Lada Girl. And it is not the easiest thing to cook with them, but one gets used to it. If you love your pooches, they're entitled to come in. Okay, now, pooches, would you please leave so I can continue cooking? I'm beating 2 eggs. If you're using only 1 pound of meat, you use 1 egg. I'm using 2 pounds, you use 2 eggs. It's not that difficult. And I'm going to add a secret ingredient that is readily available in America. This. Now, I know people go, oh my God, haute cuisine. This isn't haute cuisine. This is good food. You need a little bit more flavor than just the meat and the rice and so on. So you put a couple of spritzes, exactly this amount. This will make it, believe it or not, it adds a lot to the flavor of the meat. Thank you. That's my magic ingredient. And then I put salt and pepper. Exactly that much salt. And someday I'll figure out how to use this. And I will put a bunch of pepper. This is to taste. It actually adds a little bit because you want the meat and the inside to really be flavorful. You don't want to have bland meat And that's also why I'm going to tell you that when we bake it, you're going to bake it for 2 hours and then not open the oven and leave it there overnight. Not opening the oven, and don't peek. Okay, well, now that I'm going to put the egg in and I'm going to use my hands, the best mixing utensil is the one that God gave you. 2 hands, like kneading. I can sit with the spoon and look like a fool. And what I often see on TV is people being ultra careful, hygiene and so on. They've been cooked for 2 hours. You don't have to worry about the germs on your hands. So now we put in the egg. That's to hold it together, that's all. Okay. Now comes the fun part, which is using your hands. In Eastern Europe, I was told by my relatives that was the main utensil. They didn't have machines, they didn't have all sorts of things. My relatives came in the early part of the 20th century. In fact, they came with a wooden mixing bowl and the chopper that they had. And those were the 2 things that my grandmother brought to the United States from Bessarabia. That was to remind her of home. This is fun, and it feels good too. Reminds me when I was a kid and played with the mud. I'm going to then let this rest a bit to mix the flavors, and it'll make it, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator because it'll make it easier to hold its shape when I fill the cabbages. Having let the meat rest for about a half hour so that the egg and the meat hold together much better, we're ready to wrap the cabbages, or to make, as we say, gewickelte Kruid, wrapped cabbage. And we have huge leaves. Normally, you're not going to have them this large. I love it. If you have smaller ones, don't worry about it. You just use a smaller pan and you make smaller cabbages. So you lay out the leaf, shake off excess water, not that it matters that much. And I'm going to make these about hamburger size. Look at the size of the leaf relative to this. And you just put it in. Don't worry about it too much. You roll it over from the bottom. Now, straighten out the corners so that they don't crack. Fold it in. Fold in the side, just making little bundles. And then you wrap it like this. So then you put it here, and you'll see that as you go along, the leaves are going to get smaller. Now, this one, I notice this is still very thick, meaning it won't fold well. So I do this and I keep it because we'll put that in the bottom of the pan. Again, about this much, hamburger size, a little more, a little less, doesn't matter. But do not wrap it tightly. This is important. We have rice in it. So what is the rice going to do? It's going to expand. So you want to leave it enough room to expand. Plus, some of the sauce will come in and be absorbed by it. So again, you roll up the bottom, then the 2 sides. I could have even cut off some of the cabbage, but why bother? We're going to eat the whole thing anyway. Here we go. I sometimes make them small when the cabbage is itself small. It doesn't matter. This way we'll eat probably 1 each, and when they're smaller, you eat 2 each. And by the way, one of the greatest things about this dish is that they freeze extremely well after you cook it. And as I said before, we're going to cook them for 2 hours in the oven. And I recommend you don't make it on the stove top. And the reason is because we're going to put stuff in it and it's going to cook a long time, it can burn on the bottom. The sugar will burn, and also the cabbage on the bottom might burn, and you don't want that. I'd like you to notice that the first 3 layers on the outside of this cabbage were really large. So here we have the big ones. And I took one off. Remember, it had a hole in it, so I didn't use it. Here's the next layer. Notice they're a bit smaller. Now I'm getting to the next layer, and notice how much smaller these are. Remember how large the others were? So you just put a little bit less of the meat. But you have to make sure that you can wrap it. That's an important thing. Try to keep it like a hamburger. See how small this is relative to the others? I have a bit less of the meat. And don't worry about that, because you'll need smaller ones when you assemble it in the pan. Okay, I will finish these. Now, there's another very important step for all of you to know when you're learning to cook. I love cabbage, so I can either save this to put in the bottom of the pan, or I can do what I always do, but normally, don't teach, but don't tell anyone I told you. You do this. Semi-cooked cabbage is absolutely delicious. Now you can see all of the cabbage bundles made, and in fact, they may be too big or too many to fit in my pan. This is my favorite pan to use. It's just an ordinary baking thing for turkeys or whatever, but it's important to have one that fits. You can use a smaller one. You probably wouldn't want one this big, although if you get a huge cabbage with that many, you may need it. Otherwise, I have a smaller one that I can show you. Normally, this is the one I use when I have a small thing of cabbages. But I'm making a lot because I'm making for friends as well as myself. They love it and they don't cook. So in essence, let's try the big one. If there's extra, I'll put them in this one. I mentioned to you earlier that the outer cabbage leaf was torn. I didn't use it. What we're going to do now is take the leftover cabbage and line the bottom of the pan. Now, not only will you have delicious, absolutely delicious stuffed cabbage, but the stuff that's left on the bottom will be great on rice or other things. And what you can also do is make cabbage soup. What you do is you just take what's left over and you cook it in beef or chicken stock, and it's absolutely wonderful sweet and sour cabbage soup. So here's a piece of cabbage. You just take it, cut it into pieces like this. And you take it and you just put it in the bottom. This also prevents the cabbage bundles themselves from burning if it gets too hot. Now I take this and I do pretty much the same. Don't cut it into too small pieces or they won't be as easy to eat. Now, I spread this around. This is going to be a bed on which I put the cabbage bundles. I think this is enough. And in case I need to use the other pan, I still have some. Not that, as I say, not that it matters that much. Now we take leftover onion and do the same thing. This adds incredible flavor. don't dice it too small because you actually want pieces. Oh, there he comes again. The beast from the living room. I don't know that he loves onions as much as, oh, look at that face. He wants some of the cabbage bundles. What a baby. Now get out of the kitchen. Ragnar, you're not getting any of this, so go away.
Oh, man.
I'm going to cut off some more of this onion. As I say, we just put some. So you can see we have a bed on which to put the cabbages. Now I'm going to put a little bit of salt and some of the tomato sauce base. Here's the salt. And now I'm going to take some of the tomato sauce. Now, I basically used crushed tomatoes and both the crushed tomatoes. I used these 2 cans. Make sure it has no spices, no garlic. That's important. And I just put it in here. Now for the lowest level, I won't put sugar because I want to make sure it doesn't burn on the bottom. So I'll just take some of this because when we put the cabbage bundles in, if you only have this on top, it doesn't get to the bottom as easily. As I say, just some. When you heat it, it'll do its thing. And also important, which I often forget, is you have to turn on the oven. This is something that I'm sure many of you do too. So I turn it to bake, which will be this way. 300, there it is, 350. Let the oven heat to 350. Now remember, the first hour is just to get it started. The second hour is when it'll be baking, so don't worry about it. Now comes the assembly. And often you put a slice of onion between each one, but I don't know that there's going to be enough space, so let's see what we're going to do here. These will be in the middle because they're the biggest ones. So for the end ones, and also, you see the way they're wrapped? Keep the wrapping yet closed. See, here's the end. Don't put it like this. Put it like this. This way they won't open when they cook. Okay, so here's 3 of these. Now we can put the big ones. Okay, how's that for a row? And again, now they can't open. And now we hope they'll all fit. Now, I made some smaller ones from the last bit of cabbage. Let's put these here. Again, making sure that the end that's open is against that. And now we'll try to put like this and like this and pray that they all fit. If not, I'm going to have to turn them. Let me see what I'll do here. I think I'll just move them up a bit. Now you see why I said you need to put some of the sauce on the bottom, because these are so tightly put. And again, they're going to all swell a bit. I normally don't get it this tight, but you know what? It's fine. Squish it in a little bit, put it in, and then you're done with it. Okay, now I'm going to put the sauce. But before I put the sauce, I want to put raisins, sugar, and lemon. Again, the amount can vary up to you. I don't want to overdo it. Okay, the raisins, of course, we just sprinkle around. The raisins will add a tartness. And as I said, raisins are used in cooking for dried fruit in the Caucasus, in the Crimea, and in Turkey. And I'm sure that that is that influence. Now, most people, when they make stuffed cabbage, don't make it sweet and sour. I'm doing this because this is the way I love it. I've had it maybe 50 different ways, and I'll be honest, I have never tasted stuffed cabbage that's better than mine, and all of my friends are waiting. That's why I'm making this many. Who lives in this house is Melissa, Nikolai, and me. We can't eat all of this, but I can assure you my friends have already called when I told them I was making it. An aside, it helps to wear an orange or red shirt when you're doing this and you don't have an apron on, so that when you spill it on yourself, none of your friends will notice. So this is my special spaghetti sauce and stuffed cabbage shirt. Ah, it's heavy. Okay, it'll now cook at 350 degrees. It's going to take it quite a while to heat up to boiling. So remember, you don't just time it for it's already hot. So what we have is I will leave it for 2 hours, and at the end, turn it off and then leave it in the oven. Do not open the oven. You want it to cool really slowly. If you take it out and put it up here, it'll cool faster. Shmoof, you here again? Oh, my poor baby. Yeah. Don't worry. When it's done, I'll give you doggy treats. Have a wonderful day. Well, 2 hours are up, so let's test and see if it's okay. Remember I said leave it, turn it off, and leave it. Let's check to make sure that it's not burned or anything, and then you put it back in the oven. And always open it away from you so you don't get scalded. Okay, now I will look at that. Now I need a spoon and I will taste it to see if it needs more sugar or lemon. Okay, but that looks wonderful, but it's going to cook some more anyway. This is a bigger batch than I usually make. But notice it didn't burn on the top, and that's what's important. So I'm just going to do this a little bit. Stop. That was to let me know 2 hours were up. Okay, now I taste it. Delicious. It doesn't need anything else. So I am going to put it back in the oven for 15 minutes just to make sure it's done. And then I will leave it overnight unopened. Tomorrow I will heat it through and have it for dinner. Have fun. Hi, yesterday we made the dish and I left it overnight, and a little while ago tasted it just before I heated it, just to make sure it had the right amount of sweet and sour for me. Add a little sugar, a little bit lemon, and that's fine. Now I'm taking it out and I'm going to show you what it looks like. This has been reheated. Open it away from yourself. Now, this is what it looks like when it's done. So let's take one out. Yeah, this one's floated up. This was the big one in the middle. So let's do our best to get it out. Then I want a little bit of the juice, like this. Now let's cut it open and see what it looks like. Okay, there you go. Notice the rice is cooked through, not crunchy. And now what we do to serve is you just take some sour cream. Now remember, Orthodox Jews like my family would not have put sour cream. However, having eaten it among Hungarians, Bulgarians, Romanians, and Ukrainians over the many years, because I travel a lot, I've come to love it with the sour cream. So I won't tell my elder relatives who died 50 years ago that I'm doing this. So you just take some sour cream, put it with it, and now it's ready to eat. And you serve your guests, and bon appetit.